Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Monday. It is July the 15th. And we are live right now on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. We had a little delay on that. Apologies. Just trying to make sure that we get the stream up and running. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter, X, and we are also live on Rumble, where many of you have joined. If you guys are on one or the other, if you're on Rumble and you want to switch over to locals, I don't begrudge you. Just, sign up for one place if you're going to sign up for anything. We are going to have some exclusive content over on locals. So we appreciate you guys joining there. Listen, we got, the world has changed since we last spoke. The world has changed since Friday morning. There was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. The details are emerging. They're still pretty murky. I'm going to continue with what I said over the weekend. If you guys follow me on social media, and I'm sure many of you do, a lot of people are going to say a lot of things, and they're going to have minimal information to go on. I saw the regular talking heads out there pontificating about their thoughts on tactical engagements and what shooting looks like, even though they've never held a rifle and they've never tried to engage a target at any distance for any reason under stress. There's a lot of people that are popping off. There are a few heads in the space that actually know what they're talking about. We're going to cover them. So today's show is going to be an interesting mix, I think, for a lot of you. We're going to talk about what happened. I'm going to show you the videos if you have not been paying attention to it. We're going to show the wild coverage that was happening on the outside, discuss some of the failures that was out there, and there were many, it looks like. We're going to discuss intentional or just incompetence, because that's important to get into, particularly when we talk about government agencies. We are going to get into all of those things. I don't do conspiracies. We have gotten to the point right now where folks on social media are now picking people out of the crowd who have abnormal facial reactions to what they think is the appropriate thing. I've seen very big accounts highlighting women and men making faces at a camera and deciding that they're in on it, having no investigative background, having no suspicion of actual evidence that these people have done something. And a lot of people are getting distracted by the thing that they want to believe. I always tell you this on this program, and I will stand by it. If you read something, you see something, a reporting that says everything that you want to hear, all of the conspiracy that you believe in, all of the, it ties everything up in a neat bow. The world does not work like that. So when you see something on 4chan or Reddit, and it is a thread, and it claims to be the person who did the thing that did exactly what you think, and I'm talking about that particular shot of the counter sniper team where it says, I'm Jonathan Willick or whatever his name is, and says, I was told I couldn't take this shot. Those are bullshit. And you should be very cautious about running with it. I've seen it from very serious people. I've seen it from non-serious people alike. So we're going to try to cut through all that stuff and talk about it. Before we do, I want to make sure that we get our sponsorships, the reason why we're able to do these shows. So I want to say we're in a time right now when this one is particularly important. Our new friends over at My Patriot Supply. Folks, they've got a special deal going right now, so if you've been holding off, let me just read to you their thoughts on it. If you think that the people who have sworn to defend your freedom are going to do that, we all kind of have an instinct that that may not happen. The people that are running this country think they can violate your right to protect your family. They think they can violate they can force you into delusions on your children. They can control the media and they can hide the truth, but they cannot take away self-reliance and peace of mind. Here's some questions for you. Do you have water filtration? I do. You should. Do you have a charged solar generator or a power option? You should. Emergency food, is it on your shelf? If not, get it now and you can get it from My Patriot Supply. They've served millions of American families. My Patriot Supply is the most trusted name in survival, and for a damn good reason. You can go to preparelikekyle.com right now. Preparelikekyle.com. You can save $200 on the best-selling 3-month emergency food kit. 90 days. That's a good little window to hold out on. Okay, folks? Up to 2,000 calories a day, hidden inside a impenetrable piece of packaging that is going to keep it sealed up. These last for up to 25 years. It's good food. Preparelikekyle.com. Save $200. You get free shipping as well. Preparelikekyle.com. Look, I think a lot of folks have realized right now the game has changed. The world is different than it was on Friday morning. I have likened it in some private conversations to sitting in a kind of a scary cabin where we're all living right now. We're all sitting in that cabin, and maybe we got a couple of panes of glass between us and whatever the scary night outside is. The fog, if you've ever seen like a Stephen King movie. I don't know what's in the fog, and neither do you. I don't know if we're going to have an election. I don't know if that election, if we do have it, will resemble any election that we've seen before. But what I do know is one of those panes of glass between us and whatever that evil darkness outside was broken over the weekend. So the number one thing that I recommended is take a deep breath, pause, and use that breath to pray for America. You should pray for the recovery of Donald Trump, who seems to be doing okay. He's on his feet. You should pray for the repose of the soul of Corey Comparatari, a firefighter who was killed. He took the bullet that was meant for Donald Trump. It went past him, and it killed a family man, another husband and father who just retired from his public service job. I'm sure he saved and helped countless lives during his career. So that is a real moment to think about. And then we need to pray for this country, because this is bigger. Like any of you, you're about to see some of the footage. If you haven't seen it, and if you're living under a rock for the last couple of days and you didn't pay attention, like the priest at my church who didn't mention this at all on Sunday, which is absolutely shocking to me. I sat there I was completely blown away that the Jesuit priest that runs the parish that we go to now, we have kind of a lesser of two evils for churches, and didn't mention it once. So maybe he was living under a rock. Maybe he didn't know that the former president of the United States and potentially the future president of the United States took a shot in the ear and had some whiz by him and kill somebody else. That is a pane of glass that you cannot repair right now. And we haven't had something like that in a very, very long time. So this week, I'm going to bring on my father at some point, because that's where I look to for sage advice. It's also the person that I look to for perspective. My dad was alive when Kennedy was shot, when Bobby Kennedy was shot, when all the chaos with Jack Ruby, Lee Harvey Oswald, Sirhan. He was a news director when Reagan was shot, Hinckley. So there's a lot of things that have happened in this country, but I don't think we've seen a moment like this since Teddy Roosevelt, if I'm being totally clear with you guys. We haven't seen a moment where a president took a shot and stood back up. Now, we live in a different time, but I want to get into the coverage. The thing that's wild to me is we are not coming together because of this moment, okay? And I've talked to some folks that do chatter analysis, cyber analysis. They're good at what they do. I'm not going to out them by name because I was asked not to. But the comparison that is being seen by the actual data, the driven data on this thing, is very similar to what I also have sort of intuited from reading. The left and the right are not coming together because of what happened to Donald Trump. So if you were thinking this is a moment when everyone's going to bond together and we're going to see that landslide victory like Reagan did afterwards, no. It's not going to be that. What we're going to see is something very different, because people sense that they are in that cabin just like we are. And there's darkness and evil on the outside. Some of those people think Donald Trump is that evil. All right. And there's some really, really dark thoughts. We exposed somebody over the weekend who was an FBI employee who was laughing about it. Memes. The Grim Reaper didn't get Donald Trump. How did I miss that one? Damn, almost got him again. That kind of stuff. We'll show you a couple things. I grabbed a bunch of snapshots online just because I wanted to show it. There's people on the right that see the existential threat of using violent rhetoric and talking about someone being an existential threat to democracy, talking about how someone is a danger to democracy and our way of life. They've been doing this since before he actually took office. If you remember, I'll show you a little flashback. This sort of insanity where they have targeted Donald Trump You don't have to like the guy to know that when you do this, it is inevitable. And the first thing that I said, which was actually quoted by PJ Media right away, is that if you spend 8 years talking about how someone is a threat to the world and the world order that you know and everything that you hold dear and holy, then it should not be surprising to you that some lunatic takes your message as an order and thinks if no one else is going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And that's, it seems like, what we saw happen. My buddy George Hill thinks that this guy will be another Stephen Paddock, where we are not going to get the full story and he will disappear. I don't know if that's possible at this point, but that is certainly a realistic possibility because the FBI is investigating the shooting. But what I also see is that there are people in the middle. I talked to you about the left. I talked to you about the right. The people in the middle, the people that can actually be moved. This is where that landslide would come from. That's where that swell of public support would happen, where people go, okay, we've got to coalesce in this country. I don't see that happening. What I think is the people that should be taking the swing to the right and saying, okay, I may not like the man, but what he just represented is very American. Those people are actually doing the opposite of what you'd expect. They are doing the third option in the fight, flight, or freeze. They are freezing. They are cowering like a natural disaster is coming and they are going to shelter in place. And you are not seeing movement from the independents or the otherwise interested. They are not moving towards a Donald Trump. They look at that whole situation and they don't see Donald Trump represents me. What they say is Donald Trump and all of the chaos that brews around him is a threat to this country and a threat to me and my family and my interests. So they are staying still. So we are not seeing a swing. He may go up in the polls, but you're not going to see a swing to 60%. As far as I can tell, the polls are still under 50%. And that's how we are running this country right now, with just such a slim, narrow majority. So it's worth knowing that. Not everybody is sitting here going, I got it. I'm on board now. Tracy Beans, who was all in for DeSantis, she said, I'll crawl over broken glass for Donald Trump at this point. I don't feel that strongly about any person that is not someone I know personally. But he's doing the right things. And there are some moments that are very revealing about character that you can only get when someone puts you to a decision for all your chips and they don't prepare you. There are certain moments in your life that do not have any possibility of being scripted and being shot at and taking around in the ear, even if it was just Spall or it was a shattered teleprompter. I've heard various different things about what the story was. There was a wound in an ear and the man got clipped by something and there were bullets that were flying at his head. And there's a very distinctive sound when those things snap over you. If you've never been in a place where bullets snapped over your head, even on a range, there are places that I've done training where we were running what they call the butts. We're running the targets up and the bullets are snapping over your head. It is the most unsettling thing you've ever heard to hear a target hit right next to you, feet away, supersonic rounds. And Donald Trump's instinct, which is antithetical to all normal people, it is a very specific type of instinct, the kind of person that runs towards a threat and towards a fight, is that when he got hit, he got tackled down like he was supposed to be. The Secret Service, we can debate the merits of how well they did it. I think they did not a great job. But when it was all said and done, he stood up and raised his fist and he said, fight. And that is not what normal people do. That's what Rocky does. That's what the movie heroes do. So the AP covered that. I'm going to go into a couple of stories. I'm interested in the coverage. I'm interested in the meta coverage as always. Let's just jump right into this. This is the Atlantic. This is why people are not going to be moving from the left over. The Gunman and the Would-Be Dictator is the title from David Frum, a guy who went on Twitter and immediately said, don't you remember how a bunch of Trump supporters tried to run a Biden bus off the road? They are immediately interested in trying to do whataboutism. Joe Biden did the same thing in his White House address, which I think was pathetic. Partisan, awful, part of the problem. The Gunman and the Would-Be Dictator. Violence stalks the president who has rejoiced in the violence to others. Guys, you got to hear what the other side says. You have to know what they're saying. And this is what they're saying. When a madman, are you ready? This is the whataboutism. It starts off in the first line. This was released yesterday. When a madman hammered nearly to death, that is a terribly constructed sentence for someone who writes for a living, nearly to death, the husband of the then House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump jeered and mocked. One of Trump's sons and other close supporters avidly promote his false claims that Paul Pelosi had somehow brought on the onslaught to himself through a sexual misadventure. It goes on and talks about Gretchen Whitmer. These talking points have been marched out. Joe Biden did the same thing. They disparaged Whitmer when there was a right-wing extremist plot to abduct her. Do you want to know why this stuff doesn't ring true? It's because The Paul Pelosi problem, there have been rumors about his weird sexuality for a long time. He's been caught with young men in vehicles, completely inebriated, driving his Porsche and getting into automobile accidents on for a rolling basis for years. So maybe it's true, and maybe it's not true, but it's not outside the realm of discussion. And when somebody ends up with two men in their underwear and one with a hammer in a mansion in a place that doesn't make any sense for someone to have been able to break into, and the glass is like busted on the outside, not on the inside to break in. I don't know what was going on there either, but it's worth discussing it. And that's not inappropriate. That's commentary. And no one said Donald Trump was the nicest guy in the world, because I don't think he is. To suggest that some random, completely unrelated thing while your wife is out of town and some dude is in your house with a hammer in his underwear is somehow the same as somebody giving a political speech, and then specifically for the sake of political violence. Nothing personal, not a robbery of a home, not in your own private life as a private citizen. No, when someone is in an official capacity running for office in this country, takes a bullet, and somebody else dies from that bullet. The would-be dictator, this is disgusting stuff, but this is why the needle is not moving. They cannot help but talk about how fascism feeds on violence, this overwhelming discussion that somebody is a fascist, that someone is an authoritarian, when there is no evidence that is the case. The man was already president for 4 years. I don't know what planet they live on. We've got a little bit more fair and potentially a little bit more balanced coverage coming out of the AP. So I'll show you that as well. Amid chaos and gunfire, Trump raised his fist and projected a characteristic image of defiance. They can't do it, no matter what they do. Like, that is an iconic image. And it's not just because of the little quote that I see here on the screen that I threw up. The moment was an extraordinary illustration of Trump's raw political instincts and of how keenly aware he is of the image he projects. Even during unimaginable chaos, Trump stopped and delivered his message, creating an iconic photograph and videos that are sure to be an indelible part of history. That's not what happened. This is written by people who don't know what it's like to be under stress, chaos, and do the right thing or do something that is unlike other people. This is written by a woman, unsurprisingly. Jill Colvin wrote it. And she goes on and describes that he basically, let's just do it. Let's just cover the video downs, right? Here's the shooting. If you didn't see it, I'm going to play it for you. It sounds, what you're going to hear is Donald Trump speaking. There is a shot. He stops. There's another shot. It appears to hit him in the ear, or something hits him in the ear. He goes down. There's another shot or two, apparently 5 shots in total. And then Secret Service response, you're going to hear the shooting after that. There was a lot of chaos where nobody knew what was going on over the weekend for a while because most of us weren't there. That's what it is. I'll give you some different angles of the shooting too. So let's start off with just the main shot, and then I'm going to show you what he did afterwards.
You see something that said, take a look at what happened.
All right, as Secret Service goes, they're covering down on him. That's what they're supposed to do. Obviously, there's a dog pile. That's the game, is that you're supposed to put your body between the bullets and the protectee. And they did that. Some of them did that. You hear a woman in the background saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? I'm going to show you her in a minute, because that's pretty upsetting. Those shots should have never gotten off. Not even a little bit. And we're going to talk about that as we go on. So here's the problem. Nobody knew what happened. This was his move. I absolutely can guarantee you there are a few moments in your life when you will actually be whatever is this close to death. You've done it in a car crash. Whatever happens afterwards, the thing that you do is a genuine reaction. You can't script it. I've had it happen a few times, but the one that's most memorable to me, which is the weirdest, is that my buddy actually pulled me off a rock wall while I was doing a lead climb, and I fell about, somewhere between 20 and 25 feet, something like that. I was well up above my protection like you would. I was making a move for the crux of it. I go to do the clip in. My buddy actually cinches down on the rope instead of giving me slack. He pulls me off the wall. I fall. At the end, and I scraped up, head banged, hit the wall hard. You can't do anything about it. It just happens. And in that moment, my buddy gives me this funny look. He lowers me down to the ground, and I'm lowered down the 40 or 50 feet left. And I look at him, lifelong friend. We've been friends forever. And he says, good news and bad news. I said, yeah. He goes, the bad news is you're all banged up. Your face is scraped up. You look like shit. And you've got blood coming out of your elbows and your knees. And that looks like it hurt. And I was like, okay. He said, the good news is that you don't sound like a bitch when you're falling to your death. You sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because apparently I yelled like Arnold Schwarzenegger falling off the wall. You can't script that stuff. And this is what Donald Trump did when he faced that moment. There's no scripting. This is not political instinct. This is just what that person looks like when you peel away everything else down to the sympathetic nervous system. The core response move of Donald Trump was this. All right, if you're watching, you saw it. If you're listening, what happened is he was off microphone, obviously. He says, wait, wait, wait. He pushes his way to the front and he makes a defiant gesture. He puts his hand in the air. His face is bleeding. He's got blood from his ear. And the Secret Service is in that moment where they have to decide, do we let this man do the thing, even though our job is to block everybody? We're supposed to put all of our bodies in front of him because you don't know that there's not another threat. Here's the problem. There's one shooter, fine. You never train for a single threat, ever. Because when someone starts shooting, that could be a distractionary device. That could be somebody else in the crowd waiting to do something. Like, there shouldn't have been a shot in the first place. The fact that the unthinkable has happened, that the thing that you train for in the Secret Service every day, that is their job, right? God forbid the thing that you actually train for happen. That's the kind of language that I heard when I was at the academy too. I'm at the FBI Academy and I remember seeing this over and over, this God forbid you have to draw your gun and use it. And I never understood that. And I think that comes from a very feminine mentality. And it's an attempt to make women feel comfortable as well, which is going to be a big chunk of what we're talking about here. The answer should not be, or the prayer should not be, God forbid you have to use your gun. The prayer should be, God put me in the place to do the thing that needs to be done because I have trained for that violence. I have volunteered to take on the burden of protection. So God put me in the place to be able to respond to it properly, lest it be somebody else who's not ready. That should have always been the thing. It's the same thing that Steve Friend told me about. The statement was, the first round in your weapon has already been fired. The target is just waiting to present itself. That's a different mentality than, God forbid, I have to protect the president with my body. It's like, God, let it be me. That's the Isaiah 6:8 moment. The here I am. I'm available for tasking. If you make yourself available to tasking, and that tasking is standing in between somebody else and violence, then your prayer should not be, God forbid. And the firefighter who took a bullet, we're going to talk about him in just 1 second as well. He did that. He threw his wife and his daughter to the ground, according to his daughter's Facebook post, threw them to the ground and covered with his body, and died for it, and would do it again, according to his friends, because that's the guy he was. That's the burden you take on when you're a man and you want to have children, when you want to have a wife. It's the thing that I wrote to my wife when we were getting married. From here on out, it's you and me. But it's my job to stand in between whatever evil is out there in the world and you until we're done, until I'm not standing anymore. That's what you do when you take on the role of Secret Service. I don't want to be a Secret Service agent, but there's something to be said about folks that didn't do the job well, right? Because that's the only thing you sign up to do. There were two very prestigious federal agencies. Both of them now have egg on their face in a way that may not ever recover. Certainly not in my generation. The FBI used to be considered a premier investigative agency. It was kind of almost always one of two. If you wanted to be the best investigator, you wanted to go to the FBI. You didn't go to the DEA. You didn't go to the ATF. You didn't become a dog shooter, right? You chose that because you thought that was the path. It's up there on my wall, right? Fox Mulder. We want to believe that they're going to be able to see through the bull and make it happen. And then the second was the Secret Service. And they were always in kind of rivalry. In so much, but it was a polite rivalry because nobody wanted to have the other guy's job. It's like, oh, you want to be an investigator? No, I want to be the premier protection. We're going to do something that nobody else does. Does the Secret Service have a little bit of investigative ability? Yeah. Does the FBI have a little bit of protection? They do. They actually protect the FBI director and the attorney general. So there's a little bit of a crossover there. Mutual respect. But they were the two premier agencies. If you went into someone and said, I work for the Secret Service, that was a big deal. And when you said I worked as an FBI agent, that was a big deal. Both of them have adopted this 30 for 30 mentality. They've both gone out there and decided to embrace the idea that women can do men's job even when they can't do men's job, when they don't have the same standards, when they are not held to the same sort of accountability. And we saw what that looked like. So whether it was actual Secret Service agents there or it was DHS agents that were posing as Secret Service and doing the protective detail, I don't care. They took the only thing that they're supposed to do, and that is a failure. By the time the shots ring out, something has gone drastically wrong. And I don't think women have any business doing that work. And we're going to show you some video of that. Here's the results of it. This is the real world results. This is an ER doctor who was on the scene, who tried to take care of Corey, a man he didn't know. He responded the way that you'd expect an ER doctor to do it. So here we go.
That's exactly where I heard him come from.
What did you see, sir?
I heard the shots. I thought it was firecrackers to begin with. Somebody over there was screaming, he's been shot, he's been shot. So I made my way over. I said, I'm an emergency department physician. Let me help you. The guy had spun around, was jammed between the benches. He had a headshot here. There was lots of blood, and he had brain matter there. And so I got him. There's a helicopter coming in to get him. So I got people there really helpful. I got
Was there
him
only
up
one
on a
person
bench.
shot that you saw?
Then I did CPR, did chest compressions as well as I breathed for him.
One person.
I was the only one that did it.
We need to evacuate everybody.
We're going to play some longer clips today, and this show may go a little bit longer because there's a lot to unpack from this nonsense. That's the ER doctor. That's the consequences of when you don't do your job. And the job happened when the advanced team goes out and looks, when they evaluate the space. My father and I were discussing it. We'll talk about it tomorrow, I'm sure. The first thing you do when you have any bit of self-awareness, you don't need military training. You don't need to have been in the law enforcement realm to know that roof lines and line of sight are the two things you care about. That's it. That's what you do. You look for roof lines. You look for where could a threat come in. And he's got some poignant stories that are from history that'll be fun to talk about. I'm not going to take somebody else's stories. The result was a bullet got into the air and killed a man right in front of that doctor. You could see the blood on his shirt. He's wearing a Trump shirt. He did exactly what you'd expect. He doesn't seem like he's particularly perturbed, although I'm sure it's very unsettling to see someone bring work out of the work environment. Nobody wants that. Paramedics are prepared for it. A lot of times doctors don't do it. They're used to having a team. They're used to having other people there. God bless that man for jumping into action. And if you don't have the capabilities and the awareness to go do emergency first aid, if someone were to take a bullet near you, whether it be at your church or whether it be at a soccer game where you're with your kids or whether you're at the grocery store or whether you're in your home and something crazy happens, if you don't have the ability to jump into action, let me give you a couple of little quick tips. Number one, learn what a March assessment is. You can go back and watch our show from over a year ago, and I did a whole thing on it. It's one of the things that I spent my life doing was going to figure out, hey, what are the hard skills that I can't fake? You can't fake knowing what to do in an emergency. If you've never seen someone shot, which I have, if you've never seen someone collapse and have a heart attack or stop breathing or have an infant start choking in front of you, if you don't know what the reaction is, if your reaction is freeze, then you are going to fail the people around you. So you've got to develop those. And you need to learn how to do it. You should volunteer to go ride along with ambulance crews if they'll let you. Go along with a police officer. See a Friday night in chaos. Go out there and see what the evil looks like when it touches real people, because it'll never sink in. My personal story was watching this happen at an FBI field office. We had a guy drop of a heart attack, non-violent situation, just fell over, and stopped breathing. He was pulseless and he was apneic, and there were 3 people trained as FBI medics. They were FBI agents who had gone through an emergency basic training course. They all had EMTB certificates, and they did 0 things. They had never touched a real patient. It was all theoretical. Go break that barrier for yourself. Go touch a real person if you can when something bad happens. That doctor did it, and he said, I was the only one. Nobody else jumped into action. Most people do not jump into action. Set yourself apart by being ready to do it. And that means knowing how to use a firearm and knowing how to stop bleeding. If you could start bleeding, you should know how to stop it. It's actually not that hard. But it means that you need to step into that gap and say that there is a real problem and I'm going to know how to deal with it. So don't be the person that freezes. I'm going to carry on here. This is the hero. Cary Comparatore, I think is the name. An Italian-looking man, an Italian-sounding name. There's his 2 beautiful daughters. He had a wife as well. And they wrote and said he's the best dad anyone could have. A father and a husband who went out to celebrate his retirement and the hope that a new president would take over, someone representing his values, I'm sure. And after a lifetime of public service and working in that job, he retires and he's killed a couple days later by some lunatic. All right. There he is. So that's who you should be praying for. And what I hope that Donald Trump acknowledges that this man, because there's not a precedent in American history that I'm aware of someone being killed when the bullet was meant for the president who survived, or a former president who survived. I would like to think that if this man had the choice of protecting his wife and kids from that again, that he would do the exact same thing. His friend acknowledges the same, would have done it again. There are certain people that are wired like this. So we pray for the repose of the soul of Mystic Comparatore, and go out there and aspire to do that so that when the call pops up, the answer is not God forbid. The answer is God willing, I'm there. Let's talk about a little bit more about what went on. The ER doctor, let's do another angle of that shooting. This is the problem. Somebody left a roof line open, and it was a very close roof line. Here are people on the ground prior to the shots breaking out, calling this out. There is nothing more unsettling than knowing that this was not only preventable in the advance team, it was preventable in the moment, and something went horribly wrong. I'm going to tell you why some of those reasons are, because if you've never been in a chaotic event like this, things can go wrong. And responding after the fact, when you do poor preparation, you are going to get piss poor performance. That's what we saw.
He was doing the job. I wouldn't even be doing this. I get some beautiful places, the gorgeous ocean, the Mediterranean.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him? He's laying down. See him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
Instead, I'm here with you fighting cartel to get a Senate.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look.
And
There he is.
easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals.
He's
We
on
have
the roof. He's
drug
right.
dealers. We have people that
Right
should not be
here,
here.
right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof with that.
Okay, you're seeing a young man up on the roof. He's at the tail end of it. He had to climb all the way across the roof to get to the peak where he could actually shoot over the edge of it, or he had to elevate himself, stand up. So he had some ways to go. He wasn't exposed. He was beyond what we would usually call like the military crest. That's about a little ways down from a ridge line. You can walk on the military crest 20 feet below, 10 feet below, whatever's out of the sight line of people on the other side, and they won't see you. So he was invisible to the counter sniper teams, which I'll show you. Actually, I've got a map of it, so we'll just throw it on the board here. Let's put that up. This is the, where is it? There it is. No, I don't have it marked, so folks, bear with me. There it is. Okay, so you're seeing on the screen here. The circle in the middle is the staging area. That's where Trump was. The little orange dot, which is on the far left-hand side of the screen, outside of that security perimeter is the manufacturing facility, and you see the shooter up on that roof. It's not a far shot, but he's crawling up there. The counter-snipe teams are behind Trump on what's called the livestock barns, those three white roofs. There was one on the far left and one on the far right as we're looking at it. So it looks like the arrow north takes us all the way to the far left, which means that the shooter was north and shooting south. Your counter sniper teams were off on either side. They had a pretty good array. They could see out, basically fanned out in most directions, but they're on a roof. If you've ever shot from a roof like this or a pole barn, and I've actually done quite a bit of this, shooting at coyotes and things like that, through some, cattle and things, it's great to be elevated. The problem is if there's another elevated spot, now you're on even ground and you're going to have a blind spot behind a peaked roof. And this was a slight peak that you saw that kid crawling up on. The fact of the matter is those people are calling it out. There's a police officer that you can see in the scene that's walking by from left to right in the video we just showed you, which means he walked roughly where the shooter must have climbed up on the ladder that was there. The questions about how the ladder got there. How did someone walk up? It does look like you could actually drive up to that area. I've seen some loading dock pictures there. You could actually drive up with a ladder on your car and throw it up there, and it was shielded from the people that were standing on that grass. Climbed up. They called it bear crawled in another video, which I'm going to show you in a second, but essentially he low crawled, army crawled, elbow to elbow, and he kind of got himself up a few times. The story also goes, the AP has reported it, but it's not clear if it's actually true, that a police officer confronted that shooter after being told by all these people, went up the ladder, and the shooter turned around and pointed a rifle at him, to which place the cop went back down, and then the kid engaged the president, the former president. Kid, he's 20 years old, supposedly. Matthew Crooks is the guy's name. So that may be the case. But I didn't see a badge number, and I haven't seen, if there's body cam footage of this will be very, very telling stuff, and we're not going to see it. And here's the real problem, folks. The FBI is investigating this, which means ongoing investigation. We can't comment on it. We don't feel like we're accountable to the public. This is not like a local law enforcement investigation where they know that their money comes directly from taxpayers that live there. The FBI will hide all of this. That is what they do. And I have a massive problem with it, which is why I pointed out on social media, and we've now had almost 5 million views of this, that there are a lot of support employees within the FBI that are cheering for people to shoot and kill Donald Trump. This is not acceptable. I actually don't care what your private beliefs are. If you're going to go out on social media publicly and say that and you work for the Bureau, you're a moron. The woman that we exposed was someone called Jenna Howell. She works at CGIS. Her job previously was approving firearm background checks. She was the person that signed off on your background check when you go fill out a 4473. It would come in, she would do the instantaneous background check. We exposed her because she said she was sorry that Trump didn't get killed. You can have those thoughts. You can have all the shitty thoughts in the world you want, but when you work for a government agency and your job is in the national security range, you can't support groups like pro-Palestine Hamas lovers because that's a national security issue, at least not publicly. Have your private thoughts. You don't get to share them at work. And this is one of the reasons why I actually got myself in a little bit of hot water when I did work for the FBI. For whatever it's worth, there's actually a finding, and I think it's actually in the Sedition Hunters book. Ryan Riley talked about me wearing a Let's Go Brandon t-shirt, which I'm pretty sure I did underneath a jacket. And if anybody could read it, they would have had to know what it says. The funny thing is that it was worn because one of my training agents or one of my mentors in the office I was working on bought a bunch of them and started wearing them into the office for a regular basis. She also happened to be a Hispanic female, so she was okay with that. Nobody got after her for it. But I got written up. I got a call from DC because of a t-shirt that I wore. And that's because the people that work in the FBI that are support personnel, that are not the gun-carrying agents, even though some of them do as well, a bunch of those people that are non-combatants are running the show. The Jenna Howells of the FBI run the culture, and they have pushed it far to the extreme left. So the idea that wearing a shirt that encourages someone named Brandon as a joke, which I would take, by the way, I didn't take it to mean FJB. That's not what I took those words to mean. What I took it is kind of a finger in the air towards the mainstream media that is willing to lie to us when we know what they're lying about. If you can't push back on that, like that's not appropriate to necessarily wear a political shirt to work. I get that. But it was a reaction to something that is massively inappropriate, which is that CNN is on every single television inside the FBI. So let's hear CNN. Let's hear what CNN has to say. Here's George Conway, theoretically, historically a Republican, obviously not the way that we think about it. George Conway talking about Trump supporters are really the problem. The man was just shot at and you're the problem because you support him. This is what gets piped into your government offices every single day, and we're paying for it.
And it's an attack on the entire system, of the legal system, as Judge Grasso put it before the break. And to emphasize how dramatic this message is going out to tens of millions of people who are on the campaign mailing list. I have the email right here, the campaign email. I nearly escaped death from Donald Trump. And again, you know, they're fishing, they're just itching to do the unthinkable. There it is. He's basically accusing the government of trying to take him out. And, 10 million people get this email. I don't know how many people get this email. All it takes is one or two of them to shoot somebody thinking that, hey, if the government's trying to shoot my president, I'm gonna fight back. And it's absolutely appalling. I want to.
Nowhere in those words. George Conway just brought his own bias to it. Nothing that Donald Trump said was about the government or about law enforcement. The first thing he did was actually thank the law enforcement officer that did the job, even if they didn't do it as well as they should have, even if they were not as practiced or rehearsed as they might have been. They still did the job. And he said thanks to them. They also shot the guy. Now, there's a lot of video going around. I'm not even going to play it because it's hard to see what's going on. And I downloaded it and I just thought better of it. But essentially, there's a video of the counter snipe team that is looking. He breaks away from his scope. Many of you have seen this already if you guys are deep into this like I am. I don't think that guy took a shot. I think the other team actually took a shot. They were two. They were both in the same thing. The story goes is that the shot was actually taken from like 480 something yards away, which means the furthest team away took the shot, not the near team that was looking at him. And there's a real possibility that guy flinched because he thought there was incoming. There's been some magnification of the sniper that we saw, the counter snipe team that was there. They were wearing police, which is what you saw, but it said United States Secret Service underneath it. So in theory, most likely a Secret Service team. This is not a good look, folks. These people are highly competent and very capable. And for that to be the case is scary. So we have to ask the question, incompetence or intentional? And there's a lot of us that are asking that question right now because the level of incompetence is beyond what any of us have viewed. They're not bad at it. It's kind of like the FBI not being able to find a pipe bomber when they're really actually quite good at finding people. And I know that because I used to do it. And here's the weirdest thing. As much as anything else, it turns out to be luck. If you put yourself in the right place and you have the right awareness and you have the skill set to be able to do things, you tend to get lucky more frequently. Luck tends to favor the prepared. And so my team would regularly find a car with a minimal description that would have a terrorist subject in it, somebody that we were looking into for some sort of, threats. We would find them against all odds with the description, it's a Maryland license plate with a white four-door sedan in this neighborhood. And we would have a picture of the guy from a driver's license that'd be 10 years old. We'd still find them. And you'd run the plates and it would be correct. We wouldn't even have their plates. When you are prepared and you do things well, you tend to get more lucky. That was my experience. When you are not prepared, you tend to get very unlucky. And someone takes a shot at the former president and hits him in the ear and misses his face by, what, an inch? Do you guys have any idea how devastating an AR-15 round would be? Like this, even a 55 grain bullet or a 62 grain bullet coming in a supersonic speed, like it destroyed the guy behind him. And it nicked him by this much. It's fairly incredible to think that they could be that incompetent. But it's really possible, especially when you're focusing on the wrong things. And it's overwhelming to me that Secret Service has been compromised on purpose. By the way, I don't think it's an accident. These people are going and compromising them, not because they are trying to make the Secret Service ineffective. They are trying to make the Secret Service the same thing they've done to our military and law enforcement agencies all over the place. They are doing the same thing. They are turning them into these social experiments because, and I think Ron Coleman was correct. He actually quoted me a discussion that we had, the curse of abundance, which we did a full interview on Dinesh D'Souza's podcast a week and a half ago. The curse of abundance is that we have so much safety that we can actually engage in the bullshit DEI, the absolute absurdity of trying to pretend that women are equal to men in the same footing. Women do not have the same capacity for violence. If you've met women, you know this. They can be mad. When men decide to get violent, women die overwhelmingly across the board. That's what the numbers look like. If you haven't kept up on domestic violence, there are some men that get beat up, sure. When men decide to turn around and strike back, it's much more serious. So I think they're compromised, not intentionally to make them compromise. That's not the goal. The goal is to make them this social experiment where we try to put women in roles where they don't belong. And it's not the women's fault that have been taking it. A lot of women have bought into this. They're selling it every which way. They're selling it in superhero movies. They're selling it with Scarlett Johansson, who has a stiletto heel holding some guy by the throat while she's beating the crap out of some other guy. Real life, guy breaks her knee, takes her, smashes her down, and there's no woman left. Scarlett Johansson is a bloody pile. That's the real world. And when we deal with a former president getting shot at, we have now reached that point when the consequences are coming home. They're hitting us in a real way. Right? The mainstream media is not trying to de-escalate this stuff at all. They're telling you it's your fault. I need you to understand the meta coverage of this. I got a couple other videos, so let me just play a few of them here. This is CBS letting you know Trump's at fault. He got shot and shot at. I'm calling it shot in the ear. You got shot and it's your fault for not telling your followers to cool it off. Are you flipping serious right now?
And he closes with God Bless America, and we saw him raise his hand in the air defiantly, blood on his face as he left the stage.
He is recovering from these injuries now. This was a traumatic event, no doubt, for him. But I did notice there was no call for lowering the temperature, condemning all political violence, and really trying to signal to his supporters as well not to retaliate or to have any kind of escalation here. I just am looking at these statements.
There's a belief in his inner circle that he's under siege
I understand,
being attacked at his rally. And so there's a lot of every text message I'm getting.
Will exactly digest it, like you're saying.
I mean, every single text message, literally every single one from Trump sources is outraged and shocked. And so that is certainly the mood inside the highest ranks of the Republican Party, speaking to CBS News tonight.
Are these people out of their effing minds? I mean, I'm flabbergasted by that stuff. There's the mood that they're outraged. You should be outraged. You're an American. We don't do this in America, except when things are so disordered. Are you fine with the idea that someone's going to take a pot shot and hit the ear of a man running for president that you don't agree with? The problem is they are okay with it. They just said it's your fault. And that blows my mind. It blows my mind at a level that I can barely process. Let me give you a CNN. This is right when this was breaking. And they said, while the man is still walking off the stage and bleeding, they are talking about how the fact that he's not actually under threat. He just got shot, people. I cannot freaking fathom this.
Donald Trump and the people around him perceive themselves to be under threat. And that's all that matters. That is not legitimate. That is wrong. You hear the screams from the audience. People are terrified.
Yeah, it's not legitimate. The people are terrified. There's a man whose brain matter is all over his family because of what that shooter just did. And that's not legitimate. That's not a threat. These people do not live in reality, folks. And you know what? It goes back a long ways. Let me show you this video because I was trying to think, like, how far back has this insanity been going on? Do you remember this? Because I do. And I remember it being like, we've crossed a threshold of what is acceptable and normal in this country. This is not normal. Look, you can do anything you want with your artistic expression. That's the best part of the First Amendment. You're supposed to be able to say all the worst things. I encourage you to do so. We're also supposed to condemn things that are evil. This is evil. And this is not new. This is the first year of Donald Trump's presidency.
It's an actor dressed to look just like President Donald Trump as he's assassinated on stage. Look as his character is stabbed to death. And there's no mistaking the Trump connection. Check out the unbuttoned overcoat and red tie that hangs over his waist. It's a staging of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar that is outraging many.
The controversial production is taking place here in New York City's Central Park. The staging is being seen as a direct jab at Trump and the controversial political climate in this country.
How long can you talk about somebody and normalize the idea of killing them to get what you want before someone decides to do it? I'm going to be totally frank with you. I cannot believe that this didn't happen earlier, which is the same thing I've been talking to all my friends in the background on. I'm actually shocked that it took till 2024 in July for someone to take a shot at Donald Trump. Because these people have been blessed off on doing it. They've been told that this is the right move. They have been basically, they have been charged with taking action. How come no one is taking action? How many people out there that are absolutely nuts that think Donald Trump is the thing that is being described, an existential threat to this country, a threat to democracy? He's coming for all the poor people. He's coming for all the black people. He wants to deport all the Mexican people. He hates everybody. He hates Muslims. All of this crazy shit that has been said for the last almost 10 years. How is it that it took more than 8 years for someone to finally get up and go, okay, I will do it? I'm totally shocked that it took this long. And I wonder how many plots have been disrupted and kept quiet, because it blows my mind that someone didn't do this earlier. I was there for his inauguration. I've seen what real security looks like. We're going to talk about something right now that is called an NSSE. All right. And I got to be able to pull up the right video. I have more videos than I have space for it. Let me show you the discussion. An NSSE is what you're going to call for the Republican National Committee when they do their convention. The NSSE is the National Special Security Event. It is the thing that should have been declared on January 6th because Donald Trump was speaking in Washington, D.C. It wasn't. Oh, man, one of you just reminded me of the bloody head, the Kathy Griffin thing, right? This has been insanely normalized. So the idea of violence against Donald Trump is not just considered okay, it's actually celebrated by those on the left. The blow up the White House from Johnny Depp. Yeah, the chat is on point right now. Madonna talking about it. When was the last time someone killed a president? I'm thinking about it very seriously, says Johnny Depp, right? All of this stuff. How that hasn't materialized into action earlier. A national special security event is a DHS declared by statute and by policy. Secret Service is the point operational group that when you bring people into public for this, and the RNC will be one, the Super Bowl is usually one, all of the State of the Unions are them. I've been a part of maybe 10 or 12 of these things, something like that. I don't know, 8 to 12, somewhere in that range. I've done a bunch of these. They put out a security perimeter on the route that the president is going to travel. And I understand that Donald Trump is not the current president. As the former president, you still are affected, a pretty good thing. And as a political candidate, you should be a heightened version of whatever the former president is. They pressed this thing out to like 1,500 yards. I was listening to Dan Bongino talk about it. He says that 1,000-yard shot is where the counter snipers basically have their far limit. 500 to 1,000. Inside of 500 should be a very fast shot. It takes a little while for the bullet to travel, but a 480-yard shot, 300-yard shot. Look, we take guys in basic training and we teach them how to do this. I'm going to have Corey Mills cover that in a second here. Let me just tell you that they have declared the RNC is an NSSE. Again, it's a woman. I don't know why, but an assistant special agent in charge is a female who's talking about it. I don't get it. I don't know very many women that are like the best tacticians in the world that have done the most amount of violence overseas, that have done the most amount of violence in this country. It just doesn't exist. Why is this lady the one who's in charge of talking and planning about it? I don't even need her as a spokeswoman. You have no credibility with me. I don't know who you are, so why the hell are you talking about it? But the NSSE tells us that if they're going to call it for this, for the RNC, then they know that there are real threats. Of course there are. And they actually handle them quite well.
So as Mayor Johnson and Chief mentioned, this is a national special security event. That designation is the highest level of security designation that the federal government can determine. So we are confident in these security plans that are in place for this event, and we're ready to go. It's been an 18-month process. We've worked together over that 18 months to develop operational security plans for any and all aspects of security related to this event.
But did it change within the last one? And any change been made in the last 24?
We're not anticipating any changes to our operational security plans for this event.
Thank you.
There's no reason to change an NSSE because it has everything. They roll out the entire package. They've got people from the Department of Energy, for God's sake, that roll around and look for like dirty bombs and nukes. They put people from ATF on the ground. They put people from DEA on the ground. They put people from the Coast Guard in the water. They put the FBI dive team in the water looking for bombs. They put the Raven teams out there, which are looking around for, unmanned aerial vehicles. They've got everything. They've got all the packages, Blackbird and so on, all these different names for these different groups that go out there that can shut down. They can do electronic warfare and scramble. They have an incredible amount of resources they can apply. Why was that not there on January 6th? Why is it there? They don't have to do anything different because Donald Trump was shot at, because they've already taken all the contingencies. That's what an NSSE is. Those packages exist. They're not using them. To the point where we just saw this. Again, there's the fairground. The shot's like 120 yards away. 120 yards away, a guy apparently, and I'm hearing this from my friends who have friends inside the Pittsburgh field office for the FBI. They're talking about that this was an open iron sight shot, which is unusual because most people today don't train iron sights. I guess unless you were a kid growing up learning how to shoot a deer rifle, and you actually know how to put an M14 or an M16 rather, or an AR-15 with irons, and you know how to do that. 120-yard shot, that's not hard. Not if you know how to do it. One of my buddies is a special operator over at Fort Bragg, and he was telling me, he's like, it's kind of a lost art, the iron sights. A lot of people don't learn how to do it. It's actually the thing that everybody should learn how to do to start, and then you go get something better. There are better ways to shoot than irons. But we're talking about an iron sight shot at 120 yards. I'm going to give you Corey Mills here, because Corey, I think, did a really good job of describing it. It's a long clip, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to play of it, but it's actually outstanding. This is the best that Fox News has done in a long time. Good on Jesse Waters for having him on and talking about this in a very serious adult way. So here's Representative Corey Mills from Florida talking about this shot.
Let's bring in Florida Congressman and former U.S. Army sniper, Corey Mills. What kind of shot was this, Corey, from 130 yards?
Look, at the end of the day, this is a shot that your basic training boot camp soldier is requested to make within their 9-week period. This is one of the easiest shots, and they train all the way out till 300 or 500. And when I was doing the counter sniper, it wasn't with the United States Army. It was actually when I was with the State Department and was doing this exact thing, which is trying to look at going out with an advanced team, establishing what the perimeter is. And then as a sniper, when you would set up, you'd put together your range sketch or your range fan cards. And that would tell you where your 100, your 200, your 300 300, and you'd identify the areas of threat that you would be able to mitigate. And if there's multiple targets, you understand that your elevation and windage knob wouldn't have to be messed with, especially at 160 yards. You could literally just look, quickly glance, and know from the reference point whether it be a building, whether it be a lone tree, whether it be a parking lot, maybe it's a road. Bottom line is that this is massive negligence to the point of me speculating on what was intentional and what wasn't.
Wow.
Did you hear that? Number one, easy shots. When I was in basic training, we shot out to 300 on silhouettes with iron sights. Not hard. Not hard to do it. You can do it in an afternoon. Later on in that interview, he actually says that this kind of shot is something I could teach you how to make with high repeatability in probably 10, 15 minutes. And that's true if you have someone with basic ability who's ever pulled a trigger before. Shooting out to 400 yards with an AR-style rifle on open sights is totally doable. I've done it. I'm sure many of you have as well if you've ever gone through basic trainings. I've seen a lot of like FBI agents who can't do it. And then once again, that means a couple things though. Iron sights means that you had to learn how to shoot a little bit. There had to be some preparation. This isn't the first time you pulled the trigger. You can't just walk out there, put a dot on that somebody else aimed for you and make the shot. So there's that. You have to know how to actually adjust the front and the rear sights to line up for a good zero. Most people that shoot AR-15s zero them at 50, which is also another zero close to 200, which means that at about 100 yards or 120 yards, you're within an inch of whatever the elevation that you're looking for. It's a very easy shot to stay within about a 2-inch north to south elevation range. The wind was low, about 5 miles an hour apparently. Not a ton of difficulty in this shot. How on earth did they let somebody who is some kid with iron sights crawl up with an AR-15 and get that close? So he's saying intentional is the question. We have to answer that. We have to figure that out. That has to be the number one thing. And to the point where, and this is actually borderline shocking, MSNBC is on board with this. They get it. I think even the hard left, I told you they're not going to move. That doesn't mean they're going to like Donald Trump, but they understand that this is an absolutely unacceptable thing. If you take a shot at Donald Trump the way you did, you've given a huge political opportunity, number one. But more importantly, you have just exposed a weakness in this country that is not tolerable. We've just shown a soft underbelly that nobody should know about, and it shouldn't exist. Secret Service failed Saturday. This is Frank Figliuzzi. Even Frank, FBI 88 Frank, knows. America deserves to know why. You're damn right we do. I will take shots on people when they suck. I will be favorable to their opinions when they are accurate, and this is accurate. We need to figure out if the Secret Service is so stretched so thin that it can't handle multiple events. What we need to understand is, was there incompetence? Was there intentional malfeasance involved? Because it looks like, and I've heard multiple very high level, USASOC level snipers, tier 1, level 1 snipers that have gone through SOCOM training come out and say that there is no possibility that you missed this in an advanced team. It's too close. It's the obvious spot. It is one of the few places where you would want to have it. And there's also some reporting coming out of NBC saying, yeah, it was a highlighted weakness point. And why there was nobody on it. If there was nobody on there intentionally, like, we need to know, what did that advanced team do? Where was the failure? Did somebody highlight what it was and say, okay, well, we're not going to defend that position anyway because it's unlikely? Did they let somebody who didn't have any experience do it? Frank actually starts his piece off with the mission zero fail. I do a lot of things in my life where I consider them to be zero fail. If you go modify your bathroom and you only have one bathroom, my buddy did this, by the way, and he turns out to be a USOC sniper, and he's a Green Beret. He's an 18 Bravo, currently deployed, and an FBI agent, and a good guy. There are some of them. His bathroom, he had one bathroom and 4 kids, whatever it was. That's a zero fail mission when you start taking on plumbing work. There are a lot of zero fail missions that have way lower consequences than what the Secret Service is. Their zero fail mission is they cannot show America's vulnerability and allow the leader of the free world, or whatever you want to call the euphemisms for president. And we certainly can't let our politicians who are running for that office be shot at. It's not possible. That's a zero fail mission. That's why it's, I'll take a bullet for the president, is the mentality. That's what it's always been. You have to step into that gap. You have to say, God send me, not God forbid. So he's right. For someone to get an inch away from killing the man that's running for office, it's a game changer. For federal law enforcement, it's a game changer for this country in so many different ways. So what did our feckless current president say? I got this for you. He's atrocious. Listen to the conflation of what just happened with Donald Trump, which is without peer for the last 35 years. He's going to compare it to all of his political friends. This is the ultimate whataboutism. This is why the mainstream media has trotted out Paul Pelosi and Gretchen Whitmer. Are we effing kidding right now? Gretchen Whitmer? That's what we're going to talk about? Listen to this stuff. This is nuts because Donald Trump is at the end of this list because he cannot do it. He cannot be fair and presidential. He's a partisan piece of garbage. And he's also basically borderline retarded because he can't get his words right. So we'll go do a couple little clips, but here's 2 clips. Violence isn't the answer, per Joe.
Violence has never been the answer. Whether it's with members of Congress of both parties being targeted and shot, or a violent mob attacking the Capitol on January 6th, or a brutal attack on the spouse of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, or information and intimidation on election officials, or the kidnapping plot against the sitting governor, or an attempted assassination on Donald Trump. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever. Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Oh, that's what it is? It's gotten heated? You guys have been saying that he's a threat to democracy since the beginning. You guys are saying that he needs to be eliminated. There's some talk about how they said we need to put the bullseye on Donald Trump. That's political bullshit rhetoric. But the people that are covering down on this stuff, that are talking about how threatening he is, insane. And as you guys are mentioning, yep, an attempted assassination on one of the Supreme Court justices. People are talking about these are the threats. When the Supreme Court is a threat to democracy, what do? They go to try to kill one of them. There's a lot of loonies in this country, people. We didn't lock them all up. If you've been in emergency medicine, if you've ever worked in law enforcement on the street level, you know we are surrounded by crazies. I was driving home from church yesterday, and my kids and I look out on the right-hand side. We're in the middle of the country. It's a country church, very rural setting. We're driving through like fields with like cows and stuff. And on the right-hand side of the guardrail on a 65-mile-an-hour road is a man sleeping under the guardrail. He is 1.5 feet away from the white line. That is the right-hand limit. There's a lot of crazy people out there. If you live in Austin, like I lived near Austin, I went down there. It's nuts. There's scumbags and bums everywhere. And some of those people might think about doing something really stupid and dangerous. And we've sort of okayed it. And the ones that are semi-functional, which I'm going to show you, like this guy Matthew Crooks seems to have been, really crazy. Let me just break in with all this too. I'll just give you guys a breaking piece of news that has popped up. CBS reporting it, and also my friends over on the Suspendables have just shared that it looks like the superseding indictment against the body man for Donald Trump. What is his name? I just saw it a second ago. I'm sorry. Give me a sec. His name is Waltine Nauta. So he's the guy that's also charged in the documents case. Was the motion to dismiss was granted, that they have dismissed the indictments against him because they're challenging the legitimacy of the appointment of Jack Smith's special counsel investigation. Walter Nauta. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why they misspelled Waltine. Maybe that he goes by Walter and his full name is Waltine. I'm just looking at the court case piece right here. They've petitioned to have that thing dismissed, saying that Jack Smith was not appropriately appointed. It seems like the appeals court has actually agreed. Wild. Very wild. So that's happening as well. Let's continue on talking about this story, the Biden battle box nonsense. Have you guys heard this? He said that we solve our problems. He can't even get the words right. He means ballot box, obviously. But as some of the militaristic type guys that I follow that are on Twitter, I follow a lot of special operators, former special operators. They said, I don't know what the battle box rules are for this event, but I'm in for the battle box. I think a lot of us are getting to the point where it's like, we're sick of this bullshit. And the battle box sounds just fine. Only because the norms have been broken so dramatically. Here's the President of the United States bumbling through a speech.
Ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, we must never descend into violence. Republican convention will start tomorrow. I have no doubt they'll criticize my record and offer their own vision for this country. I'll be traveling this week making the case for our record and the vision, my vision of the country, our vision. I'll continue to speak out strongly for our democracy, stand up for our Constitution and the rule of law, to call for action at the ballot box, no violence on our streets. That's how democracy should work. We debate and disagree. We compare and contrast the character of the candidates, the records, the issues, the agenda, the vision for America. But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. You know, that's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets. The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of a would-be assassin.
Would-be assassin. He means assassins. Yeah, so we're either doing battle bots or battle boxes, not with bullets. I don't know what the rules are of the battle box, but apparently it's going to be like tomahawks. I'm okay with that too. I got tomahawks, whatever. Edge weapons only, no guns, fine. Maybe it's proxy mines. If you guys were James Bond's fans, I was playing the GoldenEye game from when I was a kid. This is the coverage from MSNBC. They don't always get it right. This one's good. From the Oval Office, Biden forcefully condemns political violence, assassination attempt on Trump, and we need to lower the temperature. Really? Who do you think the assholes were that have been raising the temperature on this stuff? The guy that was standing in front of a red-lit Independence Hall with Marines on either side of him talking about how you need an F-15 or an F-16 to be able to challenge the government because we have nukes. Are you... The gaslighting is so intense. And you guys probably know this word, but gaslighting, it just simply means that somebody is telling you something is not happening when it's obviously happening. They are turning up the temperature on this garbage. And he's acting like it's not happening. Truly wild. Unfit for office. I still don't want to see anyone do any violence against him. Like, Joe's going to die of natural causes. I have a lot of belief based on the things that he's done with his life, his public stuff, unless he has made some really, really interesting repentance and he makes a repentance on his deathbed. And I know God will forgive him, but most of this country is going to look at the things he's done and it will be absolutely unforgivable. So if this is what victory looks like, I don't want to live in a country where this is how they do it. Nobody should be excited about something bad happening to Joe Biden either. But him not being in office is a really good move and it needs to happen. So there you go. Let's do a little bit on the shooter because I think it's quite interesting and I think a lot of people are fascinated like, oh, is it a hoax? Listen, you're going to hear a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's just incompetence. This is the claim. Matthew Crooks was an unhappy kid and he was bullied. I've got two videos. One of them looks like it's probably him, but I can't substantiate it, but it's been pretty widely reported. So I'm going to play it for you. And I've also been seeing reporting that both of his parents are mental health counselors. Now that's a real problem. If you know anything about the mental health service, there's a few people in this country that are mandated reporters. Actually, in the state of Texas, everybody is. If somebody is has violent ideation, if they are suicidal or homicidal, you're actually required to report it. If you're in law enforcement, if you're in the medical community, if you are in the mental health field, those are the three things where you have to do that. Now, I previously have sat in the place where my wife was a mental health counselor. I was a paramedic with a license in the places I worked. And then additionally, I was also a law enforcement officer. So I've seen where you have to make these reports. If you have two parents that are aware of homicidal ideation in somebody, including your own child, you are required by law to report that. So I will be very interested to find out if that is followed up on. It's not because I want to see people held accountable. I actually think done right in a really incredible world, Donald Trump will also go visit the family of those two people because they just lost their son. If he wants to blow the water out of everything that anyone would ever think about it, he can do what Pope John Paul II did. John Paul II got shot, and then he went and forgave his would-be assassin in a jail cell and brought the man to tears. If you don't know that story, look up Pope John Paul II. There's a reason why he was canonized. Some of that stuff is truly wild to do. Imagine someone shooting at you, trying to take your life, injuring you, putting you in the hospital, and when you recover, going and sitting in the jail cell with that man and weeping together. I would love to see Donald Trump do that and destroy all of the bullshit narratives about how evil he is, because there's an awful lot of people that are close to him that love him. And they love him because he does the right thing sometimes. Obviously, he does. His instinct was exactly right. The way he stood up and did the fight, that's a Rocky moment. That's Sly Stallone as a fictional hero doing it in real life. And he did it at 78 years old. So that's not nothing. I would love to see that moment. Let me play this little piece of this guy, Matthew Crooks. This is a childhood acquaintance of his, someone who went to school with him, apparently.
I mean, he would sit alone at lunch. I mean, he was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're going to see someone like that, and they're going to target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. Like, I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah. You said he was a loner?
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but like he was just bullied. Like he was bullied so much.
This was high school.
Yeah.
What did do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
Yeah, that's what kids do. Bullying has happened forever. The idea that somebody would take that out. This actually looks more like a mental health crisis when you see this video, assuming this is correct and assuming this is the guy. So I will caveat it. I haven't been able to independently validate it. That's not what I do, but this does look like the same guy. And this seems like the kind of person who would be unhinged enough to go out and take a shot at a president, which is basically a death choice, right? That's suicide by somebody. You're not going to survive that encounter. How about this kid? That's truly wild. If you've never seen somebody who's, psychotic, that is lost touch with the reality that we all live in, that's what that looks like. Just pulsing rage. It looks like mental illness. I worked in a psych ED for a period of time. We were the ones as paramedics because they needed less medical. They just needed physical restraints that the male paramedic technicians would go back and put people, and we didn't have padded rooms. We had solid wall rooms so that if you were to hit them, you'd actually knock yourself out. They weren't soft, and sometimes strapped people to the bed. I had people that committed suicide or attempted suicide. I had people that did other wild stuff. We would take those suckers in and put them into these rooms, and we would just observe them, and they would throw food trays against the walls. They'd throw their bodies against the walls. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you see when they're screaming, slash his throat. If you couldn't hear? He was screaming, slash his throat. And then they said, could you say that again? Because they're obviously taping it. And he said, Republicans slash Republicans' throats. This is a kid that supposedly was a Republican, registered, right? And there were a lot of people in Pennsylvania that registered as Republican in order to go and vote for Nikki Haley in the primary because they were so concerned with Donald Trump getting out in front and being the nominee. That is not a person that seems okay. So the forceful condemnation of political violence, where we're talking about Gretchen Whitmer and a flipping hammer in Nancy Pelosi's husband's house, this is not the same thing. This is a truly unwell human being, if that's the same kid, and it looks like it. I want to do a couple of deeper dives into what was said. Eric Prince put some stuff out there. I'm going to show you a couple different little Twitter pieces. There are two that were very, very good that I read. I read a lot of stuff on social media. A lot of people don't get it right. Fair number of people are starting to get there. So Eric Prince is the founder of Blackwater, and now this company is called something else. I know it was called Academy. I think it was called X for a little while too. I'm just going to read most of his posts because it's actually quite good. He says, hopefully after the tragedy in Butler, we can all recognize the unaccountable, bloated bureaucracies continue to fail us as Americans. That's true. Donald Trump is alive solely due to bad wind estimates by an evil would-be assassin, as the graphic shows. There was a full wind value of 5 miles per hour, just enough to displace the unconfirmed but likely light 55-grain bullet 2 inches away from Donald Trump's intended forehead to his ear. He was not saved by U.S. Secret Service brilliance. The fact that the U.S. Secret Service allowed a rifle-armed shooter within 150 yards of a pre-planned event is either malice or massive incompetence, as we are saying. Corey Mills said the same. These are people that know when we're looking at this stuff, it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, these guys trained for much further than this, and I cannot believe the security bubble was that weak. Clearly, he said, quote, clearly, there was an adequate, uncontrolled dead space for a shooter to move into position and take multiple aim shots. Watching the newsreel, one can see how proximate the shooter is in the very short time. Yeah, we've actually seen since then. You can hear it, though. It's quite close, and it does sound like it might have actually been suppressed. Now, that may be off-axis noise rejection by the microphones, but very possible because we hear louder cracks from the Secret Service rifles, which are going to be probably a bigger caliber, 308 or maybe 300 Win Mag. 300 Norma, something like that. Law enforcement sniper in the newsreels is clearly overwhelmed as his face came off the rifle. And instead of doing his job to kill the shooter, they were clearly watching the shooter, but apparently had no first shot policy. The only positive action was an apparent 488-yard shot by one U.S. Secret Service sniper, which dispatched the assassin after the assassin launched at least 5 rounds, wounding Donald Trump and killing and wounding several others. He talks about his business of being in a war zone, doing diplomatic security, and so on. Obviously, Eric Prince has a lot of experience in that space. Unserious and unworthy positions in positions of authority. This is where it gets down. Nearly got us into this disaster. Merit and execution must be the only deciding factors in hiring leadership, not social engineering, which is the priority of the day. Sadly, nothing in Washington reflects this any longer. Donald Trump is right to question the competence of those protecting him because yesterday they failed in almost every way. Nature abhors a vacuum, and they will always find other options. That's all true, folks. That's what incompetence looks like. And there's another one, which was written, you're seeing on the screen, from Susan Crabtree. She says, here's why the Secret Service did not shoot until after the shooter engaged, and some context from the House Republicans investigation. It's already underway months prior to the Trump assassination attempt on whether the agency's DEI policies are affecting its readiness. There's some blowback against the Secret Service. It started within the hour. Even though the agency is credited with saving Trump's life by quickly shooting the killer, there's obviously major problems. She says, that Secret Service community, sources within the community, said if you want to take a shot and then find out that the guy was holding a telescope, the Secret Service is reactive by nature. You better be right when you do or you're effed. Knowing that your agency will not back you to do the thing that you're trained to do is the worst case scenario. I experienced a little bit of that in Portland. I took on more risk than I wanted to when I was hanging out in Portland in an undercover surveillance role. I had 5 or 6 Antifa idiots from a quote-unquote security element surround my vehicle. And I basically was counting on the fact that my vest would stop the first round if somebody tried to draw, and that I'm fast enough at a draw that I'd be able to kill whoever tried to kill me before they did. They had their hands invisible. They were surrounding a vehicle. They had no reason to be there. I was the only car on the street, and they went out there and found me, and I was miles away from any protest, but they had seen my license plate previously, and they'd spotted it, and they sent people out. And we heard it over the radio that they did. When you know that your agency isn't going to back you, you take on additional risks. When you take on additional risks for a former president, when there's a guy with a flippin' rifle up on a rooftop or on a ridgeline, we are living in the upside down, folks. And this is obviously what it looks like. It looks like this. Just going to leave that on the screen. There's a lot of people talking about her weight. I don't know what her weight is, but she's clearly like feminine build, right? I don't like to make fun of women's weight per se, because women come in all shapes and sizes, and some of us know that that's what moms tend to look like too. And I think moms are the best people in the world. They're the most attractive in the world to me. So that may be a mom wearing a vest, right? She's wearing kind of a fluffed up chest thing. Her thighs don't look ridiculous, but she's carrying a gun that she has no business carrying because she couldn't even get into the damn holster. Look at that holster, by the way. I have that holster. I don't ever carry that damn thing. It's like a Raven concealment holster outside the waistband. What is she doing? That is not a serious person holster. Like, that's a person who works in an office holster. That is not a gunfighter holster. So there's that. She's left-handed. She has a hard time getting back into the holster, so she's at the point where she actually quits and doesn't put it in. There's other pictures of this same woman hiding behind the protectee. She got behind the men who have thrown their bodies over the top of the president. What in the shit is going on here? You guys see this? You can see her circled. Same gal. There's another picture of the other female that was in the job, and she's holding onto her sunglasses. Now, people do weird things, but if you haven't trained to drop all things so that your hands are either capable of holding a weapon or holding onto a person or carrying somebody out, get out of here. Imagine you're doing emergency medicine. You run up on the scene. You're a paramedic. You take your sunglasses off because you need to get rid of those, and you're not wearing eye pro like you're supposed to. And then you try to do compressions, but you're doing it one-handed because you're holding onto your sunglasses. That is a freeze moment. That is an absolute failure of your sympathetic nervous system. You have moved into partial freeze. And the women that were around the cop, this is the same woman, I believe, that is yelling, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Now, maybe this is not her full-time gig. And if it's not, what in the actual hell is she doing out there? And if it is her full-time gig, what in the actual hell is she doing out there? I do not get it. This cannot be a reaction. As I said, I think on a social media piece, if the thing that happens that you train could happen and you respond badly, you have no business in that job. You have not been trained adequately. I watched women go into the academy at Quantico that had no business carrying a gun. All of them are FBI agents. The scariest people in the world to me are federal agents that draw a weapon. I used to tell my buddies the biggest compliment I would give is if I would turn my back on you when you drew your weapon. If you drew your weapon and I decided to cover a different sector of fire, I trusted you, and that is very rare. I do not trust them. I do not trust federal agents in general. They are shit with a firearm, and they are scary bad. We were doing reload drills, and they'd be in the 6 and 7 second range when I'm in the 3 range. What are we doing here? Are we professionals? Is it a profession of arms? Are we trying to carry weapons for a living to the point where we may have to use them? Or are we in the God forbid category, which happens all the time? These ladies scare the crap out of me. I've seen women that have heard a scream from another room and shot a couch, and they tried to pass her through the FBI Academy. She ended up failing for doing some other dumb things. And you know who hired her? Secret Service. Her name is Elena Parra. I'll just name her. She has no business owning a weapon, ever. She's scary. She's about 4'11". She's my wife's height or smaller. I fought her on the mats because that's what happens. You get paired up with females. Sometimes it's like fighting a toddler. Like my 7-year-old daughter is more aggressive and a better fighter. And my 7-year-old daughter has no training. This girl was a Marine. She's a Secret Service employee. As far as I know, she made it through all the training. I reached out and told the people down at FLETC, hey, this person failed out and this is why. She didn't even have to disclose her failures for the FBI, and she sued the FBI for being treated unfairly. She did a slalom course in a flipping car. One of the things you might have to do is drive a vehicle if you're in a protective detail, right? Everybody should be able to jump in the car and drive because somebody might be holding a bullet wound. They might be holding onto an artery and not be able to let go. Everybody should be able to get behind the wheel. She couldn't even drive the slalom course that takes 2 minutes to do, and the fast guys would do it in like 15, minutes 15. 2 minutes. The time limit was 2 minutes. She did it in 15 minutes and hit every cone. And they let her be in the Secret Service. She failed out of the FBI Academy. She should have failed out immediately, but she made it all the way to the end for the last couple weeks. Failed things that were not even pass fail. She failed familiarizations with guns, which is to say, hold the shotgun, shoot it 5 times, and then give it back to the instructor. So you felt a shotgun. She couldn't even hold on to it. She failed things that were not pass fail. And she got hired by Secret Service after that. Because she's a veteran, and she's a female, and she was Hispanic. She was the triple threat, y'all. Triple threat. Elena Parra. I'll never forget it. They showed a video where we were like supposed to decide whether or not we could shoot somebody. And it's like a woman who like disables a partner and picks up a gun, and you're able to shoot them because she disabled a partner. So she's like, you shoot the bad guy or whatever. And they do this on a video screen. It's like Hogan's Alley stuff. It's a shoot, no shoot. And after she shot, they go, so what's the headline going to be? Because the headline is you shot an unarmed person. There was a gun right next to him, but they didn't have the gun. That's still a deadly force situation. Everybody knows it. My partner did it. We did it. We all went through it. Then we sit and watch the next team. She goes through. They're like, what's the headline going to be in New York when you guys, when you shoot this person? And she says, Elena Parra shoots partner. And everyone just like went white. They're like, what? And she was like, Elena Parra shoots partner. And they're like, you think you shot your partner? And she was like, I didn't mean to, but I think so. What the fuck, people? That person is a Secret Service employee. As far as I know, she's an agent. She got hired on by Secret Service and passed through FLETC and all the follow-on training. I wouldn't trust her to protect anyone. I wouldn't protect her. She can't protect anyone. It's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. I actually went out there and told my instructors, this person cannot graduate. It will be a liability to the federal government. And they, for once, actually agreed with me at the end of it. And they let her say goodbye to everybody, even though she failed out. That person works for the Secret Service. That tells me exactly the kind of crazy shit that we have going on in our DEI 30 for 30. And what's even more amazing, let me see if this is the same lady. Is it still the clip here? No, that's Corey Mills. Let me just show you this because this blows my mind too. And I'm just on a rant right now. Sorry.
So as Mayor Johnson and Chief mentioned, this is a national special.
That's Audrey, some hyphenated Italian name. Audrey looks exactly like my old boss, Aubrey. They all look the same. They're these blonde women. They have no children. They have no social life. All they have is the job, and they live for it. And they are the worst people, and they shouldn't carry a gun. And that lady, I swear to God, she looks just like my first supervisor, who was the worst employee. She was the worst manager I've ever had in any job, and I was a Baskin-Robbins dollarly employee, like $3 an hour employee in whatever, 1994 or something, 1995. The worst people they're letting in charge of this stuff. It feels on purpose. So that's why we're all worried about it. All right. Let me show you some of the hatred too, because we got to see this too. This is why if you have a federal employee that is making posts like this and you know who they are and you want to expose them and you want to come to me, my DMs are open. You can come directly to me and I will expose them. I have ways of vetting it. So, don't send me bullshit because I will. But look at this. How do you miss when your target literally looks like this and it's an orange face with yellow teeth? It's an orange. It's a fruit. They're showing a picture of that. Another one, it shows a soccer player who fell down. It says, they almost got Trump. How do you miss? The hateful crap. There's another lady on there. How do you miss shooting that big ass orange face ass bitch? These are just people in the world that are terrible. Last lady, because these are the ones that you're going to see. Trump literally has the biggest head ever. How do you miss that? Don't piss me off. Now, they all have anonymous type names. Some of them actually post in their own names. If they post in their own names and they're a federal government employee and they work in a place where they should not have that sort of political thing, look, they can have that privately, but they can't have it publicly. If they're sharing that and you want to communicate it to me and you want to burn them, we will. We got almost 5 million views on this one gal. I don't know what's happening to Sieges today, but they're probably scared shitless because we expose somebody who is sick, who's let their hatred of even their own job, like with the thing that the gal that we showed, Jenna Howell, we showed that she hates gun owners. She called them ignorant hillbillies and rednecks and morons because her job is to approve people for gun purchases. The federal government has no business getting involved in most of our business, and we're seeing more and more of it right now. All right. I will not leave you without a little bit of fun. And also, let me just suggest to you guys, if you want more news, you guys can go to catholicvote.org/loop. You'll go get the loop. Today's loop is going to have more stuff on there, including this last little piece about Benny Thompson, which I will share as we wrap up. But check out Catholic Vote. Support them if you guys are so inclined. They are an American advocacy group for faith, family, and freedom. They are not associated specifically with the Catholic Church. They are just Roman Catholic people, just like me, that care about this country. They're all in for Donald Trump, and they are trying to move Catholics to make sure they vote so that they actually get the vote that we want and not have more of this insanity. They are a fantastic group. They support our program, and we're really grateful for it. I want to show you kind of that last little piece here. This is one of the stories that is in there. This is just actually coming from the Committee for Homeland Security. Ranking member Benny Thompson from Mississippi introduces legislation to ensure that no Secret Service protection for convicted felons if they're sentenced to prison. It is referred to as the Denying Infinite Security and Government Resources Allocated Towards Convicted and Extremely Dishonorable Former Protectees Act, or the Disgraced Act. They're trying to pull Donald Trump's security detail. They've been trying to pull it for months. This is going back to April 19th of this year. And there are major reports coming in from people who are in the position to hear about it and know. Guys like Dan Bongino talk about stuff in the Secret Service. I listen. He's saying that there have been significant requests to have an increased footprint and an increased package. And my guess is this, and I don't have substantiation for it, so this is speculation. I'll call it right out from this. There are packages that they give for what are called FPOTUS, the former president. And then there are packages that you get for the current president. And then there are dignitary packages for VIPs. And they have different sort of threat assessments. They assess what the threat looks like. I would bet that they justify giving Donald Trump a lighter B team, a less capable team, under the FPOTUS, because generally speaking, once you're the former president, you don't have that many threats against you. There's not that many crazies that see you. Your name's not in the press every day. You kind of disappear. Who's going after George W. Bush right now? Not very many people. But Donald Trump is not a regular FPOTUS. He's a special breed that's running for president again. And we haven't seen that even in my lifetime. We haven't seen it since many of your lifetimes. It hasn't happened that a president's run a second time. So I would bet that they are justifying a lighter package under the FPOTUS sort of tiered threats and not looking at the actual threat. And there have been people that have had guns pulled off them. The other thing is RFK. Why has that guy not got a security detail? It's wild shit right now. We are in the Wild West and things are about to get more Western. So I want you guys to prepare for it mentally, physically, spiritually. Pray for this country and this evil stuff that these guys are doing. They want more of this. Do not think that this is the end and it's all going to just, gel around a Donald Trump. I think we broke one more pane of glass and there's a lot of darkness outside that cabin that we're sitting in. That's what I think. All right, last little bit, merch store. If you guys want to support my buddy Garrett O'Boyle, FBI whistleblower, and his family, you guys can do so by going to our merch store, which you can get the shirts like I'm wearing right now, the darkened badge. It's the-suspendables.com. The promo code Kyle, Kyle, will save you some money, 10% or so. And if you guys want to do that, I don't want to belabor it too long. We've gone on long. But if you guys want to go to any of our sponsors, they're always in the show notes. We really appreciate them supporting the program. Let me give you a palate cleanser, for God's sake. Maybe this is the answer to how stupid things are. We'll do a palate cleanser, and I'll give you a 5-star review. Here we go. Palate cleanser. What if racism is the answer?
You know how our country's falling apart, and then they're like, the woke people are like, oh, this country was built on racism. It's like, maybe we should do more of that. Maybe that was working. You guys like the railroad? Wasn't built by the LGBTs, I'll tell you that.
All right, benbankus.com if you guys want to go and see that comedian. He seems like he's got a pretty good grasp on the things, right? The railroad, the West was won by hard men with bold and daring women that backed them up and went with them. But maybe some of the stuff, like throwing out all the traditional values and the way that the world has worked for all of humankind, wasn't the best move. We are in a time of an abundance, of luxurious abundance, and that is a curse of abundance to us because we will take and tolerate risks that should not be there. It happens because you forget that we are still in nature. We are still part of it. If you want to see what human beings normally look like, go to places like Alaska where people get eaten by flipping bears. My first surveillance I did was in Alaska when I first joined my team. And this was in 2018. We went out there and one of the agents' brother-in-laws was eaten by a bear on a jog. When you're in the food chain, you think about things differently. We've gotten so far removed from that. There is a real time for us to remember that consequences happen when you get lazy and when things are soft, and soft men make bad decisions like letting women be in charge of protective details or make, these NSSE calls. So pray for this country, pray for the safety of those at the RNC, pray for the safety of those at the DNC that comes up next week. Pray for all these people, because we do not need this violence. If you're not prepared to hold your loved ones in your front yard with someone dead that you love and know, then you are not ready for a civil war. I 100% agree with my friend Steve Friend talking about that. So let's not wish for it. Here's a 5-star review. If you guys want to review the show on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc., you guys can always leave us those reviews. You can always leave us a comment. This one is from Jason Cloninger, who I recognize from Twitter, Uncomfortable Truth, Palate Cleansers, and The Suspendables. 5 stars. Thank you, Kyle, for making the Kyle Seraphin Show a place to find. The uncomfortable truth is always on the table. I look forward to your palate cleanser, which is a good decompression after getting some maybe not so good news on the true state of the union. And of course, I love your guest appearances of the other Suspendables as I sip my OD Green Patriot Cooler mug. You guys can go to Patriot Coolers too if you want to get that. The same promo code Kyle. It's in the link. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the review. Folks, thanks for sticking with us today. I know we went long, and God bless you. God bless this country. God bless the people that we don't agree with. Let us find some common ground with them that doesn't involve us going to the battle box, whatever the hell that is that Joe Biden says. We'll see you guys again tomorrow, and I expect to bring my dad on very soon, either today or tomorrow. Tomorrow or the next day. So you'll hear a little bit of perspective from some age and some wisdom in the Seraphin family. All right. Love you all. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.